Welcome to Playing the Long Game. I'm Yusuf Bodiat, and this is a podcast about long-term thinking, plainly spoken. Let's begin. Most leaders know exactly what needs to happen. The hard part isn't the plan. The hard part is those 10,000 decisions between the plan and the outcome. Execution is where strategy meets reality, and often reality wins. Now, there's no shortage of knowledge into how to run good businesses. There are books and MBAs and consultants that teach us what to do. You could argue we're actually drowning in the amount of information as to what a good business looks like. But knowing isn't doing. And and the gap between knowing and doing is where most businesses actually lives. So, a few examples. Everyone knows they should have hard conversations with underperformers. Almost nobody does. Everyone knows they should kill projects that aren't working. Almost nobody does. Everyone knows they should say no to the marginal customers or the customers that are not profitable. Almost nobody does. Execution requires those uncomfortable actions, and that's why it's so difficult to execute. Firing people you like, killing projects that your teams love, saying no to revenue, changing habits that feel comfortable. Every one of those has an emotional cost. And as human beings, we are wired to avoid the emotional costs, especially when the payoffs are so far into the future. And there's a bias. The bias is towards maintaining the status quo. So keeping things as it is, doing things the way we have always done. And we've all heard it. Let's just continue doing what we do because we have always been successful. And don't change something or don't fix something that's not broken. Now, not doing something is always safer in the moment than doing something at all. And execution is fighting that bias every single day. And I'm not saying say no to everything, but deciding when to say no and when to say yes is the key part to execution. It's why great execution is actually quite rare because it actually requires special knowledge. It's not because it requires special knowledge, but because it requires special discipline. And that discipline plays out in those 10,000 small decisions that we don't usually notice. Now, I've mentioned those 10,000 small decisions or 10,000 small choices, and there's a big distinction between strategy and execution. Strategy is the one big decision, whereas execution is those small decisions, those 10,000 small decisions that happen daily, hourly, sometimes minute by minute. And it's not the big decisions, it's which meeting to attend, which email to respond to first, which piece of feedback to address first, which document to review when I've got a mountain of documents to look at, which report to read first, which customer to visit. And most of these small decisions happen on autopilot. Autopilot is good because it takes away effort from the choices. But autopilot is also bad because it's defaulting to comfort or urgency. So it defaults to comfort or defaults to urgency rather than deciding based on a strategic priority. Because, for example, we open our inbox and reply to whoever's shouting the loudest or whoever's name is the most senior on the hierarchy of names in the organization. We accept meetings because they on the calendar. We fight fires because they're on fire. And many CFOs joke about the fact that CFO means Chief Fire Officer, not Chief Financial Officer. And the question is, what does good execution look like? What does great execution look like? And I said earlier, execution is about making those 10,000 small decisions, but making those decisions very deliberately in service of strategy. And I'll say that again. Great execution is making those 10,000 small decisions very deliberately in service of strategy. It means asking before each choice, does this serve what we've said matters? So if I were to respond to this email first before that one, does it assist in the bigger scheme of things? If I were to read this report before that report, does it serve the needs of the strategy or just because it's the most important report at this point in time, which won't matter in 2 weeks from now? So am I just responding to what's in front of me? Now, individually, each of those small decisions don't actually have an impact, but over time, as you compounding it, and we spoke in a previous episode about the power of compounding, as you compound those small decisions over different teams, over different weeks and months, they either build the strategy or they quietly erode it. And there's no in between the two. Those small decisions either make the strategy stronger or help implement the strategy, or they erode the strategy in its entirety. But, and there's one but to this, even deliberate execution meets a force that doesn't care about your plan. Now, we all know every plan looks good on paper, but reality always has different ideas. The market shifts, customers behave unexpectedly, COVID happens, lockdown happens, competitors respond, team members leave, regulators change, technology moves. Something you don't foresee often always happens. I think the one point is that change is a constant. So something that we don't foresee will almost always happen. And there are two failure modes in here, two distinct and so vast failure modes, but both failure modes. The first is rigidly sticking to the plan when reality shows it's wrong. So saying we will stick to this plan no matter what, and refusing to adjust at all costs. And the second failure mode is abandoning at the first sight of reality happening. So when something negative were to happen or a market shift were to happen, immediately stopping the strategy because you were told to stop the strategy. Now, both of these failure modes destroy execution. And what makes a great leader great at executing? And let's call them great executors. Great executors don't stick to the plan rigidly. They also don't abandon the plan if something were to go wrong. So they know when to flex, they know when to hold, they know when to fold, and they know when to adapt. And that skill only develops through repetition, through judgment, through honest assessment of what's actually working. And this is where the compounding effect yet again comes into play, because compounding has a magnificent effect on strategy and execution. Um, a team that's adjusted the strategy 3 times over the past 5 years, keeping the strategic direction but adapting the tactics, will outperform a team that's either rigidly held the strategy or constantly changed the strategy. And the compounding effect of doing the right things at the right time, the small things over and over and over, does have its benefits here. Because remember, execution is a long game. It may look small in the moment, but it looks decisive over time. Strategy without execution could be seen as fantasy. Execution without strategy is just outright chaos. And leaders who play the long game well do both of them, strategy and execution. And they treat those 10,000 small choices or 10,000 small decisions as seriously as they treat the big ones.